Hello, everyone. Welcome to the College Tribune's interviews for the SU candidates. My name is Rowan Kelleher, and I'm an assistant news editor, and I'm delighted to be here with Molly Greenough, a sabbatical officer candidate for welfare. Just before we begin, Molly, would you like to take 60 seconds just to introduce yourself and why you're motivated to run for sabbatical officer welfare?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm a stage 4 law with social justice student, and I'm originally from just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Um, I've been involved with the union since second year. I ran as class rep, and then after that, I went to run a successful election as law college officer, and I'm currently acting as the SU's mental health campaign coordinator. So I'd say my involvement with the union is one of my main influencing factors for running. But for welfare specifically, I think I really understand what it's like to be on the other side. The SU has helped me when I was in low places, and I've actually gone to the welfare officer. And I think that I'm an extremely approachable, outgoing, and compassionate person. So I think that welfare suits me, and I just really care about the students in UCD, and I want them to know that their union cares about them too. So I'd say that's why I decided to run for welfare.
Okay, thank you. And just as well, your manifesto touches upon 4 points, the core points of your manifesto being mental health, housing, harm reduction, and sexual health. So I think just starting with the first point there in terms of mental health, you mentioned that there's discrepancies within the external counselling and voucher system. Could you explain what you mean by discrepancies?
Yes, of course. So from my understanding, a lot of people that I've talked to have had very different experiences with the external voucher system in UCD. So for those that don't know, UCD has a limited capacity for on-campus counseling, but you can get vouchers to go to an external counseling location. And some people go and have a fantastic, their counselor renews their vouchers and they don't have to have any hassle with the health services or anything like that. But then other people go and they get the free vouchers and they're cut off after that. So I want to work to kind of remove any of those discrepancies. So if you are going to an external counseling location, everyone has the same experience, because I don't think it's really fair for some people to go and have a fantastic experience and get up to 15 free sessions, whereas other people get their first free sessions and then are pushed aside. So that's one of my main points to work on there on mental health.
Mm. And is it a case that UCD isn't activating contracts with the same counselling service, or is it that there's just multiple counselling services that are being used?
I believe there are multiple counseling services being used in different locations, but that's kind of what I'd like to get to the root of the problem. And I'm not really sure why it is like this. I'm not sure if the counselors aren't informed with the same information, which wouldn't be any fault on their part. But I'm actually not sure. That's why I'd like to get to the bottom of it. I don't know why these discrepancies exist, because I thought I personally have used the counseling system and I'm someone that had a great experience. So it kind of came as a bit of a surprise to me when I was chatting to peers and some of my friends that they didn't have such a similar experience as I did. So I hope to continue the work of the mental health working group that's been set up this year by Rory, and kind of get to the bottom of it and work together with counseling services and see what we can find out.
Okay, and just in terms as well, your manifesto, of course, supports a lot of mental health measures to support mental health, for instance, like workshops dealing with bereavement and yoga, etc. But I'm
Mm.
just wondering, is this missing the point in terms that a lot of the reasons students are citing for their mental health concerns this year, especially, is because of online college and the stress around academics, be it not
Mm.
having a clear extenuating circumstances policy or around late submissions, kind of like the no detriment policy. Is this
Yes.
missing the point in terms of we're looking at the cure, but we're not looking at the actual causes of the problem, which is UCD's reluctance to do academic regulations? And are you looking towards solving some of those causes?
Yes, definitely. I understand that the root issues are obviously the most important thing to tackle, but on my manifesto, I kind of wanted to include things that might be able to evoke kind of more tangible change earlier on, so students might actually be able to benefit from it earlier on in the stage. That's why one of my points on under mental health is including workshops on the extenuating circumstances application and liaise with student advisors in different schools to hopefully provide clarity on those measures. But at the end of the day, I know that all of the yoga and meditation in the world won't do anything if UCD doesn't adequately support their students. And that's why I'm a big proponent of introducing a no disadvantage policy again. I I suppose there's lots of people that really want it, and I think it's disgraceful that we're coming up on April 2021 and we've gone another whole academic year without one. But I think University College Cork implemented one, so I think UCD should definitely follow suit. But yeah, I am aware the things on my manifesto won't be the be all and end all of saving UCD students' mental health, but I hope that they're a good place to start. And I really hope I'm able to work together with the future education officer and the president and the rest of the sabbatical team and hopefully get to addressing some of the bigger underlying issues.
Okay, and just then moving on to housing, just for mental health. You expressed support for reinstating the housing officer in the SU, but is
Yes.
this not a question of funding rather than support? Because the reason the position was let go in the first place was Conrad Anderson citing the fact that there wasn't just the funding there because of COVID. So where do you
Yes.
suggest this funding might come from?
Um, I actually that's something I don't really know where the funding would come from, and I suppose I do have general knowledge of the SU's financial structure, and obviously the SU shops have taken quite a hit from the pandemic and being closed for so long. So I can't provide an exact answer on that. I don't know where the funding would come from, but I'm a big proponent if the money can be found somewhere that it should be reinstated. But on the off chance that the SU doesn't have the finances this year, I'm interested in taking a housing advocacy training course on for myself, just on the off chance that a housing officer isn't able to be reinstated. I'd like to be able to better support students if elected welfare officer in relation to tenancy rights, risks of homelessness, and all of that sort. So I don't know how the practicalities of the money for reinstating the um, housing officer, but I am a big proponent of it. But if not, I'm willing to step in and hopefully ease some of the pressure in that circumstance.
Okay, just keeping with housing as well. I think similar to your predecessor, Rory Power, you've expressed your um, support to continue fighting against the on-campus rent increases. Um, I'm just wondering though, is this a fight that's worth fighting? Because UCD has come out just in the last few months really saying that they're only going to review rent in campus increases where it's financially feasible to do so. And given that UCD is in a black hole of like 100 million because of COVID funding crisis, um, is this really a fight that's worth fighting? And will we get actual tangible results from the effort?
I'm of the opinion that it is absolutely a fight worth fighting. The question is, I don't know how much tangible change will be affected from that. But I think if we can get a large student body support for the fight, then it could even help going forward when UCD continues to build more accommodation and continues to build up. Um, but I'm not sure if I'm not sure how successful it will be, but I think it is a fight worth fighting, if that makes sense. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Just on that kind of topic as well, in terms of getting
Yeah.
students kind of together and protesting these things. You mentioned in the past that you're somewhat against rejoining the USI or the Union of Students of Ireland. I'm Just wondering though, is this the ideal position basically to rejoin the USI in terms of putting pressure on UCD by being part of a wider body of students nationwide to affect change, rather than simply being in just UCDSU? Because UCDSU is the only college outside of that USI umbrella. Um, is this not the
Mm.
perfect kind of opportunity to rejoin and be part of a national effort to address housing, address mental health?
Yeah, I do see a lot of the merits in rejoining USI personally, but at this point in time, I don't know. In theory, it would be a great time to rejoin USI and fight on the larger issues of no disadvantage policies, housing, anything related to the impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. But at the same time, I personally haven't heard any discourse going on in UCD about rejoining USI. So I think it's a bit futile to even bring up the question of rejoining when, at least from my experience, I think students are incredibly disinterested in it, and which is entirely fair because there are a lot of other really important things going on right now in terms of their own lives and their own mental health and everything. So I think it could be a great time to rejoin USI, but also at the same time, with the union's finances in a bit of a bleaker place than usual, it would be really expensive to rejoin USI, and that the price of that would likely have to fall on students, whether it be a €5 increase to the student levy. So from that perspective as well, I think it could be difficult to try to push forward a referendum on rejoining USI, especially given all the financial implications of the pandemic combined with the general disinterest from students, at least in my experience. But I do think rejoining USI could be really good for improving collective bargaining amongst just Irish students as a whole, but I just don't know if UCD students are interested in that right now. But if they were, I would 100% support rejoining, and I would advocate in any way that I could, but I just haven't personally seen many people even debating joining USI.
Okay. And then just moving on to the next point, just in your manifesto, which is sexual health and well-being. Apologies there.
No
Um,
worries.
you mentioned that you're in favor of having a mandatory consent training module. I'm just wondering, could you go into the specifics of this and what it would entail?
Yes. Well, I believe as of this year, UCD is well, I believe the year prior they piloted, and this year it was launched a bystander intervention training course that I think around 5,500 first year students took. So that was a 90-minute course, and kind of goes into what to do if you're a bystander in cases of like sexual assault or sexual harassment, and then goes a bit into consent. I would like to see if it's feasible to maybe extend that past a 90-minute class, and see if there could even be a 90-minute aspect of it focused completely on consent, because I think it is such an important part of well, it's such an important part of sex, and the most important part of sex. And students, when they come into college in first year, it's a whole new world and they're not really sure what's going on a lot of the times. So I think if they can get that training the first as soon as possible when they're in UCD, if I'd say even orientation week, if it were possible, not even week one, then that would be really beneficial. Um, so I'd like to look into seeing the practicalities of extending the current bystander intervention course, but then of course it would have to be piloted on a group of students, and we'd also have to be mindful of that the course may be triggering for some students. So there would have to be an option to obviously, if it's a sensitive matter for some people, then we would never force anyone to do the course. But that's basically where my thoughts on it as are now. I'd kind of like to work to extend the current bystander intervention program.
And just to clarify, that's would it be a semester long module, or would it be?
Um, No, no, I wasn't thinking. I was kind of thinking along the lines, do you know, like the Innovation Academy workshops that they kind of do, where it's a module kind of pass fail, but it doesn't run for the entire semester. I was kind of thinking along the lines of maybe if it was a 4 week course and it ran 4 hours in total, 1 hour each week, and but it was attendance based, so you would fail if you didn't attend without of course if you're exempt for whatever reason. But that was kind of along the lines of what I was thinking.
Mhm. Okay. Um, Last question here. Just your policy seems to mirror Ruri Power's, your predecessor, in several
Mm,
respects. Be it HIV testing or campus accommodation.
mm,
But I'm just wondering, how do you think you will approach these issues differently, in order to perhaps succeed where Powers didn't, and
mm.
where you can improve?
Yes. See, I think I give Rory all the credit in the world because, from my understanding, being a welfare officer is an incredibly difficult job, even in the best of times. So I think he's done a fantastic job given the circumstances of the pandemic and everything being online. And I don't think that this was a year that really anyone expected. But I suppose I hope going forward, I will be able to um, I hope that I'll first of all have a bit of in-person things on my side. So whereas when it comes to housing protests, I think the kind of it was just kind of building up around March 2020 and the storming the university club, which is I don't know if I would mark that as a huge success again, but it was getting in the right direction. So I hope that that kind of energy is going to be able to build up again. And then in terms of HIV testing, I've actually chatted to Rory, and now I think the first important step in relation to HIV testing is lobbying first and foremost for the gay men's health service to reopen, because that means Dublin in whole has been without free HIV testing for over a year. And then I would also like to work closely with the HSE and lobby them to increase at-home testing kits, which they've piloted over the last few months and have proved quite successful during the pandemic. So I hope to start there, but ultimately, I I'd like to believe I can work really hard on these issues, and that's not to say Rory hasn't, but I will be willing to I would like to start like a movement, and I know it's difficult when SU engagement is so low, and I completely understand why students are so disillusioned with the SU. It feels it feels like we have or the SU has let students down, and in times they definitely have. There's not a lot of trust any there, and there's not a lot of trust there anymore between the students and the SU. So first and foremost, I would like to work and rebuild that trust, because while I know that there are so many students that don't care about the SU, I just want students to know that the SU does care about them. And I think that that's a great place to start. So I hope by rebuilding that trust, it can get more students involved in the campaigns and the arguments and the debates and what we want on campus, because at the end of the day, it's the students union. It is supported by students, and without students engaging, nothing can really nothing tangible will be able to happen. But I think Rory was quite successful in helping lead the campaign on paying nurses, midwives, and radiographers. And I think that that goes to show how many students were passionate about that, and how many students, even though they weren't nurses, even though they weren't midwives, they cared about their friends and they cared. So everybody got talking about it. So I think if we can kind of try to echo the success of that movement and just get people talking, I think I hope that action and tangible change will follow that.
Hmm. Okay. And just last question, just in relation to your point on harm reduction. You've quite a few points on drug use and students, but I just want to pick
Mm,
you up on just one of those where you express support basically for lobbying politicians to implement drug testing measures to ensure that
mm,
students are safe if they will
mm,
take, say, hard drugs. Um,
yeah.
is that not a hard promise to keep though? Because you're essentially asking politicians to condone drug use.
Yeah. I suppose it is a hard promise to keep, but actually it was already introduced in the 2021 budget. I wouldn't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I believe Ireland is going to start implementing drug testing sites at festivals. Um, and I do think I understand where you're coming from. That would seem like politicians are, they don't want to endorse drug use. Nobody wants to endorse drug use. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to kind of drive home the point with them that you're not really endorsing drug use. You're endorsing people. Well, I suppose, yeah, that actually is endorsing drug use. But I suppose in the matter of, would you rather not endorse drug use, or would you rather have how many, or whoever knows how many people die from taking a bad pill or something that they don't know? I think drug testing has become very popular at festivals in the UK, and I think that it is something that should definitely be implemented in Ireland on a wide scale, because I don't know, I think at the end of the day, illicit drugs are dangerous, and there are really no safe ways you can take them. But if you are aware of what you're taking and you're informed of the safest way to take it, then I think that that's beneficial in my opinion. And I hope that politicians would start to see on that side of things.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Molly. That summarizes all the questions that I have. Unless you'd like to say just one last thing to the watchers.
Well, thank you for listening, and I really hope you'll give me your number one vote on March 31st and April 1st. And my slogan is mental health over UCD's wealth. So a vote for Molly is a vote for mental health, and I will always be fighting in your corner on whatever issues you find most important. So thank you for having me.
Okay, well, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you.